Hi, everybody. This is your old pal, Uncle Hondo. Welcome back to the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. I am your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer on Sports Illustrated, Hondo Carpenter, and joined as I have been for nearly 2 decades by one of my dearest friends, a very well respected journalist, a tremendous and highly successful attorney in the Atlanta Buckhead area. He joins us each and every week to dig in, go after games, talk about what's going on around the league. The one and only, the living legend, the great Johnny Shop. Johnny, look at that background. Y'all got some snow in Georgia.
Actual snow. It's really like a big holiday. This doesn't happen maybe once every 10 years or so. So we will be out there with a couple little brooms, couple little shovels. There's a lot of Southerners very, very excited for a little snow. That's our backdrop today here in the North Georgia mountains. It's a good backdrop for a busy week in the NFL and, of course, the start of those playoffs.
Are you going to take your beautiful bride sledding?
Yes and no. We're going to start with walking in the snow and doing some playing in the snow. Believe it or not, a lot of folks don't have the traditional sledding snow pants and full gear that you might need. At the same time, we've got some hills, so it is possible. But at the same time, I think we're going to baby step it before we start going flying down the hills.
I can always see a critic saying, "Oh, they're not good friends. Hondo didn't know his wife's name." Yes, I do. We're friends. I'm just not going to use it. And she's not a public figure. John is. All right, John. Let's get to the Raiders. They let Antonio Pierce go. They let Tom Telesco go. This is clearly Tom Brady in command. Total direction. Once they get the GM, I expect them to continue to make changes in this organization. If you expected anything less than Tom Brady, I don't think you really understood who and what he is or why he was brought in. Mark Davis was not broke. Mark Davis did not need the money. Mark Davis brought him in because Mark Davis coveted his wisdom and direction, and he's getting it. I would love your thoughts on what's going on with the Las Vegas Raiders.
There's a lot going on, and what it looks like is a very clean sweep, and that's understandable. And there's more of a buy-in mandate. There's more of a window that Tom Brady has. So if you're ever going to clean everything out and clean the sweep, you can do it when you've got really the most successful player of the modern era out front or right near the front saying, hey, this is what we're going to do. That's ultimately probably what should be done best to keep the fans in check. And look, it's not necessarily a 2 or 3 year process anymore in the NFL. It can be faster, as we've seen, as most recently with the Washington football team. And let's talk for a second about our old friends, the Kansas City Chiefs. Folks, before Andy Reid got there, you remember they won 2 games. Andy Reid got there, they won the first 9 the next season. And that was before Pat Mahomes got there. So what I see here is a clean sweep. I also don't see it's not all terrible work. If you look at the Raiders' first 3 rounds in the draft this past year, obviously they did some good work. Now, let me look at from a bigger perspective, and surely Mark Davis and the Raiders ownership, they must understand where the fans are coming from. They also have to understand and appreciate fans have had some bad luck. So they get their guy back, John Gruden, and he is terminated in an untimely process. That wasn't planned. And then what did they do? Well, they probably did the right thing, bringing in Rich Bisaccia. And he did pretty well. They probably did the wrong thing in not hiring him for another year. On we go to McDaniels. He has enough games to determine that he's not going to be the guy. Probably do the right thing with Pierce there to be the interim coach. They probably do the right thing with Pierce, giving him the full-time job. And they probably do the right thing with this big sweep and change, removing him. So what I'm trying to say is, as bad as the decision set may look for Raider fans, from an outside perspective, it also looks like a huge chunk of bad luck. And this is a great way to take that Etch-a-Sketch thing and slide it to the left and right so it's a whole blank slate. Now you got to get the right people to do so, because nobody's going to pat Tom Telesco or Antonio Pierce on the back too hard. But Tom Telesco had a really good draft the last year, and it wouldn't surprise me if it's not as easy to replicate that each year, but it's critically important. And I know Raider fans don't want to hear it, but you're probably not as far away as you think you are in the NFL. evidenced by currently the Commanders and in division the Chiefs, 10 or 15 years ago. So hang in there. There are better days ahead.
I can't argue with you one bit. Let's talk about which current opening is the best. And I want to get into explain what I mean. A lot of cap room in New England. They've already got a promising young quarterback. You look at the Jags, where there's very, very little expectations. The big drawback there is the GM, but the owners made it very clear with the GM right next to him. I'm willing to dump this guy if I think you're the one. They've got Trevor Lawrence. But when you look at the Raiders, a lot like Jacksonville, no state income tax, which we're not getting into politics. It's just the reality of being a millionaire. That's a big deal. Um, they don't have a quarterback that's firmly established yet. They may have one in Aiden, but we don't know that. Ton of cap room, the sixth pick. But I think right now, if you're looking at all of them, where do you think? How do you think you rate them, John?
That's a good question, because what we should see is a big parade of, we got Caleb Williams, we got Trevor Lawrence, we got Drake May. We should see a big parade in these openings of, we've got a quarterback, and some coaches are going to be like, that guy can win with, and there's probably going to be some that are going to say, no, I don't think that guy can do it with the way I work or with what I see. And also cap money, and then maybe the spotlight thing. And that's the interesting thing about Las Vegas for the Raiders. It is a big spotlight, but it's not as hyper focused, I believe, necessarily as New England might be or the Bears might be. That's not a bad thing. It's just that the Raiders fan base, as we know, is spread off quite wide, abnormally wide. It's one thing to have a national fan base like the Steelers, like the Raiders, like some of the teams in the NFL. It's another to have it heavily concentrated in a pretty wide area, but an area that you could circle on a map with, given where the franchise was. I'm not sure if Jacksonville is the best opportunity, but it's probably the one that would be the easiest to be a coach in. You've got a super, really football focused area of the country. It's not a very big city. If there's a guy like Mike McCarthy who's looking for a big change as far as how many eyeballs and people are scratching at him, that might be the spot. You've got this really interesting setup with the talent is kind of there in Chicago. Like, that's what they have, versus New England, where you got an open slate, you've got an open checkbook, and you've got the main piece there, but you've also got a really high pick. So I think that each spot has a good thing to offer. And it's going to sound hokey, but I think it's true. The best job is going to be the one, it's going to end up being the one that matches best with the coach they got. So if Coach X, if Kyle Shanahan, for example, were to go anywhere, I don't think he'd have the same level of success in New England, Chicago, Las Vegas, or Jacksonville. Same with Mike Vrabel, who may or may not be considering more than one or two of those places. So I know that sounds hokey, but I think that's one of the lessons that we've seen with success of NFL coaches overall. You've got to be really fortunate with the timing, and also the coach has got to fit, because when I look at what happened to Doug Peterson, it's like, how did that go so off course and so wrong? And then you look at other guys that maybe have more success than you would think that they would. Sometimes it's a real situation about the fit of the coach with the organization. That's what I'd be trying to get right if I was any organization and if I was any coach, is to get that right. Because if that's wrong, you're going in the drink.
Teams reached out to Dallas, like we talked about on this show before. McCarthy would have no problem getting another job. Do you think, and now McConnell up in Minnesota is a guy that, some people may be interested in. Is this a one-off, or do you think we're starting to see something that maybe Gruden started, where coaches now are on the trading block?
I think we're starting to see this game go more towards professional soccer in terms of contracts and those type of things. I think it's getting closer to a 1-year league where, like, everybody's pretty much on a 1-year deal, and you're going to see coaches hop around a lot more. That's what it looks like to me. The Steelers are an anomaly, And hopefully there'll be another coach that's out there now that's there, even a half dozen years. That's a standout anomaly. I think this is a real sea change as far as the tenure of coaches and maybe even of general managers too. So I do think we're in the front end of a trend where the old, you get 2 or 3 years. It's almost a 1 year operation in the NFL every year, as we're seeing right down the street from me here in Atlanta. That's a great example of a 1 year operation.
John, you and I have talked on this podcast for so long about the upgrading of tech in the NFL. And in fact, we talked about it with the Commissioner Goodell at the Las Colinas winter owners meetings. Now we're starting to see it trickle into the game. Talk about that, would you please, sir?
So many folks out there know CES was just went down there in Las Vegas. So up shows Sony with the debut of the new coaches communication systems. We're basically talking new and upgraded headsets, more secure, more noise cancellation and amplification so the players on the field can hear what's being said. Basically, we're looking at this is a teaser to me of the tech that's coming to the NFL. People have noticed those pylons that are getting moved with the first down chains. They've got cameras, they've got sensors that probably aren't being used yet. We're going to keep an eye on those. But as far as this coach's communication, that's cool. We always like to see when they have a new model of it. It's just, this looks like a big jump. It's a big enough jump that Sony brought it out at CES. And the NFL, I think, is teasing us and teeing up that they've got some real tech innovations to come. As people out there know, and we know that you love this sport and this game. If you're watching this thing, if you're listening to us, the spring league really counts and matters to see what is coming. We're going to keep our eyes on the Pro Spring League that will start on March 30th to see what other innovations they have, because those often are going to follow to the NFL. NFL looks great now. It's a great time of year for it. It's literally going to look a little bit different come Labor Day this coming Labor Day, now that we're into 2025. And what you just saw at CES was a little bit of a kickoff for some bigger and better tech coming to the field.
John, do you think, let me just say this. I said it last year after the season. I did not think the Chiefs were going to win the Super Bowl. I stand by it. I think there's a good chance they get there. I don't think they're going to win it. But do you think that they can get the rust off quick enough by week 2? Talk about the Chiefs, would you, a little bit?
Yeah, I really now do. If this is ever going to happen, somebody's going to know how to kick the rust off for 21 days. You've got to yield to Andy Reid at this point. Mm-hmm. This is arguably the best professional football coach in the history of the sport. He's dealing with the same group of core players. He's dealing with the team that was a little extra injured at the start of the year and now has guys coming back. He's got to know about the situation with rust. And remember all the times in Philadelphia he had a bye as well. So I got to yield to Andy Reid on this one if you're looking at it on paper and believe that they can manage it. Do you expect them to look perfect out of the gate next week? No. Even if they look great out of the gate, they might still be a little bit of a herky-jerky, rickety start. To me, if the Chiefs can get by the first game, which I expect that they can, I think that's going to be their toughest challenge. If that happens, I actually am on the other end of it. I think we are going to see them repeat again, which is incredible to say. But it's going to be fascinating. We'll get this week first, but I'm already fascinated to see what are the Chiefs going to look like. And if they do know how to not get rusty, which is nearly impossible, it's probably just how little rust can we take on, you're going to have to take your hat off again to Andy Reid and everything that they've done there. They know what they're doing. They are taking a slight calculated risk in erring on the side of really, really fresh, knowing that you can't stay in game shape without actually playing a game. But this is a huge story to watch, of course, because there's so much history in the balance. We're going to watch this week first, but for sure, we're going to be tuned in. Everybody's going to be looking for rust when the Chiefs take the field.
John, let's get to the fearsome foursome. How are we doing now in our records?
The season is complete. The regular season is complete. I think we did a pretty good job of picking the featured 4 ball games of the week because we ended up dead tied, even Steven, as in even Steven. Incredible. Great regular season. Now we start the playoffs like everybody else does, and these games are lined up. We've obviously got now what is essentially a neutral site game because of the horrific natural tragedy in California. with the Wildfires. And we've got an interesting week now. I think from a football perspective, that kind of changes the way I see that game. We might as well run through them all, even though it may not take too long for some of them. These are the games, as you know, Chargers at Texans.
To me, this one is a no-brainer. I'm taking the road team. I just like what Jimmy's done. I like the ball control. I think a ball control team with the play action when they can do it, that defense going on the road, that's the subscription or prescription to winning on the road. I'm going with the Bolts.
They look like they're tuned up and ready to go. I do think there is some value in our guy Will Anderson getting better and better, healthier and healthier. I also think there's some real damage in the loss of the wide receiver Tank Dell, of course, for the Texans. I am going against the grain here. I am going to give a nod to the Texans. The Chargers have been chugging along, and they may be able to chug along all the way to that Super Bowl berth. They remind me a bit of the Rams from last year as far as they appear to be playing downhill, but I like the home team this time. I'm going to take the Texans to start it off. Now, we are revisiting the current top rivalry in the sport, as everybody knows. We are talking AFC North. Once again, Steelers at Ravens. The reason this became the top rivalry in the sport, folks, is they played for so much over so many years in this rivalry. This time, we're not in the AFC title game, but it still matters. It's to still go either way. And there is no Zay Flowers. That's what we were told. So this takes a different look. The classic Steelers at Ravens.
Again, the ability to run the football. I'm going with the Ravens, but I'm going to say something. So this week was the SI Sports Person of the year. So Shannon and I were there with Simone Briles. We were there with Travis Hunter and several, and of course, numerous superstar athletes. And I was talking to somebody. I'm not going to use any names here, but very well connected to the Steelers. And they said to me, if the Steelers lose, and I think they're going to, that the fan base is going to go through the volcano wanting Mike Tomlin fired. Now, that's not how the Steelers operate. That stuns me to think of them wanting to get rid of Mike Tomlin. That makes no sense. I'm not saying the ownership does, and that's not what the Steelers do, but how spoiled are they that they're thinking about wanting the fans wanting to get rid of Tomlin? I think they lose and you shut up and keep rolling with Tomlin.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a fan base that hasn't had a losing season in a very long time. That's what it sounds like. I do,
Spoiled.
yeah, I do think the Steelers, the wheels are coming off. I think we're going to see Justin Fields very quickly. I think once again, Mike Tomlin's probably got as much or more than he should have out of his roster. We're going to watch and see if George Pickens can catch the ball this time. Also, I think Justin Fields is going to throw it more. As you mentioned, though, the Ravens are ready to run from the front. You know what that means. When I saw Derrick Henry in person the first time, I thought it was a defensive lineman at first, probably like most people, because it is astonishing how large and wide the guy was. And that was 15 years ago. Ravens, Ravens, Ravens. Broncos at Bills. Broncos, very happy to be there. Very happy to be there. Can they win a shootout? Probably not. Do they try to choke it down and hold the ball and play as tight as they can? Probably so. But that Bills scoring machine, it's not going to stop here, is it?
No, and I'm going to say something about the Broncos. I am not convinced because people I trust in the league who have a proven track record of developing quarterbacks all told me they did not think that Bo Nix was a first round person. Every one of them, multiple teams. And what Sean Payton did in only asking Bo Nix to do what he could do and then hiding his weaknesses and just relying on the defense was if you don't vote for Sean Payton for coach of the year, it's him or Sean McVay. And if you give it to anyone else, it's a sham. Great job by Sean Payton, but I think the season comes to an end with the Bills.
I agree with you. And yeah, it looks like a master class in coaching. Again, Raider fans, hang in there. You can go a long way in 1 year. You can go a long way within 1 year. When we saw Bo Nix early in the year, we didn't necessarily see what we're seeing here. This has really gone very well. We don't know how much better he can get. I always keep in mind what Marty Schottenheimer, the great late Marty Schottenheimer, said about quarterbacks. I'm not sure how well it applies to the NFL today, but when he was on Hard Knocks watching his son coach around the Jets, he said something that stuck with me for more than a decade now, which is in year 2 for a quarterback starting, if he goes like this, meaning stays even, that's actually progress. He didn't say that willy-nilly. He said that after a career coaching in the NFL. It's always stuck out to me that year 2 may not necessarily be where you see a big jump up from a quarterback. You're just not looking for a step back. We got to finish year 1. I think it comes to a close this year for Bo Nix, but it's been impressive, and it makes the division more difficult for the Raiders. Fine job by the Broncos. I do think it ends here as well for a Bills win in what should be the start of a run. There is no run for the loser of the Packers versus Eagles. I seem to remember a long time ago, before any snow, talking about Packers and Eagles in another part of the world. Here we go. The Eagles look primed and ready. The Packers look a little wounded, and a huge loss, of course, to a very significant player. Any shot for the Packers here in the Battle of Green?
No, I think it's all Eagles, and I think it's because of injuries. I would if the Pack was healthy, I'd have the Eagles on upset alert, but they're not. I'm going with the Eagles.
It's such a significant injury when you consider game planning and coaching for a defense, having to account for a star, and all of a sudden he's not there. I'm with you. And as some folks remember from way back when, I have the Ravens and Eagles in the I-95 Super Bowl. So we're definitely riding with the Eagles, and they appear to be primed coming in. Now, the 2 most interesting and competitive games may be these last 2, as we know. We are talking about a return to playoffs for the Washington football franchise, going down to Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Ironically, another repeat of a week 1 matchup, not the same teams at all. Arguably one of the best quarterback years in rookie play for the modern NFL. Any shot here for entertainment? Commanders, Bucks, Sunday night special.
This is a Commander all the way. I think Jaden Daniels, the whole nation will be watching playoff football, and I think he puts on a show. Yeah. I think Irvin gets his first NFL playoff win, and I think so does Jaden Daniels.
I actually think so too. You can color me, count me as biased, color me in the burgundy and gold. I think so too. I don't think the Bucks are a complete team, of course. I also think they've done a really good job with what they have, and their quarterback. I mean, yeah, and their quarterback is just become a really good pro. He's become a really good pro. When you combine that with the fire, passion, and desire, all of a sudden you've got a shot. And man, did he make some throws last week. I like the Commanders in what should be an entertaining shootout. Now we've got this semi-neutral site game last. The Vikings, Rams in Arizona. It's a horrible situation. I don't think we can appreciate, unfortunately, the damage that's gone out there. All of our hearts and thoughts, prayers, etc., go out to all the folks in Southern California, including thousands probably of Raider fans out there. Can't even imagine. And now, if you're a professional football player with the Rams, you've got this in the backdrop in your head. You know, it's not just immediate families, it's friends, agents, it's people they know in the community. This can't be helpful at all. This can't not have an impact on the game as great a professional as you could be. This, I think, opens the door for the Vikings. Vikings at Rams.
I agree with you. I think it's the Rams. This is purely gut, because I think the Vikings are in a lot of different ways better. I don't think they're better at quarterback, but I think they're better. But years ago, I had a long visit with Don Shula, and we were talking about it, picking games, and he's the one that really taught me about my 10 areas that I have and how I evaluate a game. And I'll never forget, he put his arm on my shoulder and he goes, but I'm going to tell you something. Don't underestimate a team that's been through some blank. And he goes, maybe it's a bad media report that wasn't truthful, or maybe a player loses a parent, or just something happens. He goes, there is always the 11th. Um, I don't remember the word he used, but because he gave me 10 criterion to grade a game. Because, but there's that always 11th one up on the shelf. He goes, and it's not there every week. So it's usually just 10, but it's that outside motivation. And I'll never forget, he talked about, maybe there is a natural tragedy and a tornado hits and they're just playing for their city. And I just think the Rams are going up there carrying the weight of what's gone on. They had to get out from the fires close to their facility. John, I'm probably wrong here, but I'm going with my gut and I'm riding with the Rams.
You talk about a little extra inspiration. People want to do what they can in a situation that feels remarkably helpless. It's natural for professional athletes to realize maybe we can try to do a little bit more to help the city feel a little bit better, even just for a few hours. I follow you there. I think this does help even the playing field out. The Vikings, I believe, have the mentality needed to get this matched up. And I think they've got, it's not that their defensive coordinator, Brian Flores, is better than all the other ones. It's just that it's like this guy was a head coach. And I think that a lot of times that ends up, head coaching experience ends up making a defensive coordinator a little bit better the next time around. Example in Kansas City, as Raider fans know, Steve Spagnuolo, and they know what's going on with him now relative to other openings, including the one in Las Vegas. I think there's just a little bit more that Minnesota has across the board. I like the Vikings by less than 4, but it's going to be something to see. And hopefully, for the love of California and thousands of folks, hopefully these fires are put out before this game kicks off. If for some reason they're not, if they're still going, it's going to bring another wrinkle. It's an interesting and wild way to end the first week of the playoffs here in 2025.
I agree. John, will you tell everybody where to find you on social media, please?
Put some pictures of the snow up. I might as well do that at JP Spartan. Enjoy the first week of the playoffs.
Check them out, everybody.